Welcome back everyone to another episode of Virginia Wine and Song, an offshoot of my Virginia Wine Notebook YouTube channel. Since I've resurrected this channel, I've gotten a couple of comments, primarily saying that my videos are too long. Try to make it a little snappier, so I'll try to do that. I'll try to make these videos quick, pretty brief, but I just get so involved with talking about wine and music, two passions of mine, and as well as many other people who I have encountered through the years. So we're going to just talk about, as briefly as I can, for those unfamiliar with this channel, I talk about a Virginia wine and a Virginia winery, and I pair it with what I call an underrated or overlooked, or widely unavailable, for streaming at least, album from the classic rock era, which I define as 1964 to 1999. Some people may argue with that definition. Rock music is still being made today, but as far as I'm concerned, as I get older, I'm preferring the more classic era of 64 to 99. So that's just me. So anyway, we're going to talk about the wine first, and then I'm going to go into the album that I feel would be a good pairing for this particular wine. And this wine and winery, well, the wine I should say, not the winery as much, but the wine is a little unique. It's a Norton. A Norton is a red varietal that has a lot of fans, many fans, and a lot of detractors, a lot of people who don't really care for it, because it is a very unique style of red. It's kind of chalky. It's got an aftertaste a little bit. It pairs well with pasta and tomato dishes and pizza, stuff like that. Tomato-based things, curry, things with curry in it, like Indian food. But Norton is not really a widely known varietal, even though it's considered one of Virginia's signature grapes. It actually started in Virginia. It was one of the first varietals that was attempted in Virginia. I think it was attempted back in the late 1800s, I don't think around Jefferson's time, probably not around then, but I think in the late 1800s it was brought, it was attempted in Virginia, and it actually thrived pretty well in Virginia until Prohibition kicked in the 20s, and Norton was harder to come by, and especially in Virginia. However, it was by the 1920s, Norton had found its way to the middle part of the country, namely Missouri, and Norton was being used in religious ceremonies, apparently. This is a brief history of Norton. And because it was being used in religious ceremonies in the state of Missouri, at least, it was exempt from the Prohibition laws, and it got very popular. I don't know if people really went to church just to drink wine and get drunk, but the churches were exempt. So because it had such a foothold in Missouri during that time, it continued to thrive after Prohibition was abolished, and it's now considered to be one of the signature grapes of Missouri, if not the signature grape of Missouri. But Virginia had it first. That's just a real brief lesson on Norton. If you go to Chrysalis Vineyards, Chrysalis Vineyards is located in Middleburg, Virginia. It's a very popular winery. It's been around since, I think since the 90s, actually. It's grown considerably. Their tasting room is rather large now. It used to be a very quaint country, farm type tasting room, and now it's a big establishment. And they've got, I think, pizza. They have pizza that they serve, but they're well known in the state as being the quintessential Norton winery in Virginia. There are other wineries in Virginia that also do Norton. Horton, which is a winery that's been around, I think, since the 80s, maybe even the late 70s. Horton, which is near Gordonsville, Virginia, north of Charlottesville, they do a Norton called Horton Norton. So it's always fun to go there and say, I'll have a Horton Norton, please. Anyway, the winery that I'm going to talk about today also does Norton, at least when I bought this particular bottle. I'm not sure if they still do, but they did back in the late 2010s. This particular winery is Barrel Oak Winery, and this vintage is actually 2018. When they printed the labels, they left off the last digit of the label, so it only says 201, and somebody had to take a Sharpie and write in the number 8. So this is a 2018 vintage of Norton from Barrel Oak. Barrel Oak Winery is a pretty popular winery because it's Northern Virginia. It's right off 66. Any wineries that are going to be off 66 are going to be very popular because of the proximity to 66 and the proximity to Washington, D.C. and Arlington and Fairfax, etc. So Barrel Oak is in a Delaplane, Virginia, on an exit. I'm not sure what the exit number is. I think for some reason I want to say it's 33, but I don't know for sure. But it's the Delaplane exit on 66. You can't miss it. It's well marked. Barrel Oak, they even have signs on 66, the attraction signs, to let you know that Barrel Oak is coming up. And there are a couple of other wineries at that interchange as well. But we're going to concentrate on Barrel Oak for this clip. And this is a Norton. And again, I don't know if they're still growing Norton. The original owners grew Norton, and they did a very, very good job, I thought, just as good as Chrysalis, I think, doing their Norton. And I could be wrong. And the current owners or the previous owners of Barrel Oak, if they happen to watch this video, maybe they can correct me in the comments section. Maybe the grapes came from Chrysalis and they just made the wine at Barrel Oak, because a lot of wineries do that in Virginia. The grapes are grown in another winery or another vineyard. It may even be a private vineyard that is not operating as a winery. It's just a private vineyard. It's possible that Chrysalis provides these grapes. I don't know if they actually grow it there, but they made it there at least, and that's why it's labeled Barrel Oak Norton. Like I said, a very unusual style. I can only drink it like maybe once or twice a year. It's like Petit Verdot for me. It's not a wine I can drink regularly for some reason. I just find it a little too heavy. And I don't eat a lot of red meat anymore, so it pairs well with red meat. But like I said, it also goes well with pasta dishes, with tomato. So, you know, whatever is good for your palate, that's what makes wine so great. You know, just because somebody says it goes well with a particular dish doesn't mean that you'll like it with that particular dish. It's all subjective. So, you know, everybody has their own palate, which is one of the things that makes wine so unique. Anyway, Barrel Oak. It's called Barrel Oak. They abbreviated BOW, B-O-W, as in Bow Wow Wow, which is what the previous owners like to say when they wrote their blogs and what they posted on their website. I've been there a few times under the new owners. I don't know the new owners very well, but I got pretty familiar with the old owners, Brian and Sharon, and I think Brian is still. I don't think he's in Virginia anymore. I think he's back in California. Again, if you happen to see this clip, please correct me in the comments if you like. Anyway, I did have a DJ. Before I go on to the music, I just want to mention one more plug about Barrel Oak. It's a very dog-friendly winery. It's been that way since they opened, under the old owners and under the new owners. Bring your dog. They allow dogs inside and out. I think they still let them inside. Again, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe they still do, as long as they're friendly dogs. I don't know if they let them off leash, but I think they let them inside the tasting room. They're definitely allowed outside the tasting room. The outside area, it's a picnic area. It's sloping on a hill, and they've got fire pits. I think the most fire pits I've seen in any winery. They're not always ignited because sometimes it gets windy up there. If it's too windy, they're not going to put on the fire pits. But if it's a calm day in the spring, summer, or fall, it's a great place to unwind by the fire pit with your dog. Who doesn't love the smell of smoke from a campfire getting into your clothes and your skin? And it sounds interesting, but it's a great experience. Barrel Oak Winery. Bring your dog, bring your cat, bring your ferret, whatever you want to bring. It's animal friendly. So anyway, we're gonna move on to the music now. Again, I'm trying to move a little quicker here than I normally do. I did have a DJ company with my previous partner, John. We had a company called SoundLinks DJs, and we DJ'd right around the time that iPods were becoming popular in the mid-2000s, 2004 to like 2010 is when we operated. But our business kind of didn't do well because tastes in music had changed, and also how people enjoy music had changed. Anybody who had an iPod at the time, or then Pandora or Alexa or whatever you want to call it, they can do their own DJing now, so why hire a physical DJ? So we ended up folding, but we got really close to a lot of the winery owners, and that's how we ended up falling in with Barrel Oak. We did a gig or two there, I think. So anyway, I know the original owner was a big fan of music, so we're going to move on to an album and an artist that from the 70s that was fairly well known at the time. This album that I'm going to talk about came out in 1978, I think. 79. This album came out in 1979, and I call it sort of like a long-lost Fleetwood Mac album. Fleetwood Mac was huge back in the late 70s, of course, as we know, and they actually had their own album that year, 79, called Tusk. This particular artist is Jon Stewart. And last week I focused on Al Stewart, and I was happening to go through my vinyl collection because I keep them in alphabetical order because that's the kind of geek that I am. Right next to Al Stewart I had Jon Stewart, and I'm like, wow, I haven't listened to this album in a long time. And I don't believe this album has ever been released on CD. If it has been released on CD, it's a bootleg, because I don't think there's an official copy of it. But I still have the album. I actually inherited this album from my brother-in-law. He had it in his garage, and they were getting ready to throw away about 50 pieces of vinyl they had. And I'm like, don't throw them away. You don't throw away vinyl. So he had this in his collection, and I grabbed it, and I'm like, wow, Jon Stewart. The only song I know from him, well, he wrote the song Daydream Believer by the Monkees. He wrote that song. That's probably his most famous song as a writer. But he also put out a couple of albums, and this is probably his most popular album at the time, called Bombs Away Dream Babies, whatever that means. Jon Stewart, he did all the vocals, he did all the guitars, he wrote the songs. The big song on this album that was a top 10 hit at the time was a song called Gold, which was kind of about the fickle nature of Hollywood and the recording business in particular. But there are a couple other great songs on here. I really think it's a lost classic, and I think if any remastering outfit gets their hands on this, whether it's MoFi, Mobile Fidelity, or Analog Productions, whoever, there are a couple of companies out there that do great remasterings of CDs. Rhino is another one. They should get this if the original tapes are still around. It's possible the original tapes are gone, or perhaps the original tapes have degraded. But this would be a great release on a remastered CD. In addition to Gold, it's got some other songs on here. Somewhere Down the Line, Midnight Wind, Over the Hill. And the reason I call it a long-lost Fleetwood Mac record in a way is because both Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham are prominently on this album. Buckingham lends his guitar virtuoso work on this album, and he also sings backup, as does Stevie Nicks. In fact, on Gold, their top 10 hit, you can hear Stevie in the background singing the chorus along with Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart's voice is very interesting. It's gravelly. It's, I almost call it sort of like a Southern California version of Johnny Cash in a way. I think he's got that gravelly voice to him. And there's a song on here where he actually kind of tries to mimic Cash's voice a little bit. It's the vocals are kind of pushed back in the recording, and it sounds almost like it's echoing a little bit. It's a very unique song and album, and it's worth listening to for sure. Check it out for sure. Mary Kay Place, who was an actress at the time, she's still an actress I think today. She was on the old TV show Mary Hartman, which if you're a child of the 70s, that was the one show your parents did not allow you to watch. Mary Hartman, my parents included. I could watch any TV show I wanted to in the 70s, but I couldn't watch that one. But Mary Kay Place was in that show, and she's been in a couple of movies as well. She was in The Big Chill. But she's also a singer, and she sings backup with him on one of these songs. She's a very good singer. The last thing I'll say about this album is it was released at the time on RSO Records. RSO Records, Robert Stigwood's company. Robert Stigwood was the manager of the Bee Gees and Andy Gibb, and I think he even managed Eric Clapton for a time. So he was a big music manager, and he had his own label. Again, if you're a child of the 70s and you had any albums in the 70s, most likely you saw this label a lot. This label was the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack was on this label. The Grease soundtrack was on this label. The Andy Gibb solo records were on this label. It was a big label, and then all of a sudden it disappeared. I think he sold it to another label in the early 80s, so you didn't see it again. But this is, Jon Stewart was on this label, and this is an original pressing that my brother-in-law was getting ready to throw away, or at least it looked like he was getting ready to throw it away. Anyway, so I'm wrapping it up with these two favorites, Barrel Oak Norton. It's a good wine to savor while you listen to this. Get out your turntable, If you have a turntable, and I know a lot of hipsters out there have turntables now, find this record if you can. If you can find it on eBay, go to a local vinyl shop, they may have it. If you can't find it anywhere, that means this album may be worth something, so I better hang on to it. So anyway, thank you for joining. I'm glad I kept this relatively shorter than last time, and I will see you next time.